The lands between is vast, that is undeniable. Something I have not seen talked about in as much detail would be what lies beyond the lands between. The lands with which we, the Tarnished, originate from. While there isn't that much info, we know that the world of Elden Ring is much, much bigger than you might think. So sit back, relax, grab some popcorn and enjoy as we discuss the world beyond the fog. The first piece of information we receive on the world beyond the fog is actually at the start of the game, where we travel from beyond the fog to the lands between, blessed by grace once more to stand before the Elden Ring. A question that isn't actually answered until later and easily missable would be, how did the Tarnished, our player's character's ancestors, reach these distant lands beyond the fog? Well, it all started long ago, when the Hue of Grace was stolen from Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and his soldiers. Godfrey was ordered by his wife, Queen Marika the Eternal, to leave the lands between with his soldiers in tow, the Tarnished ancestors, and Godfrey set sail across the fog. We are not told much of what the fog actually is, but it seems to be some kind of barrier. My first thought regarding the fog was the very heavy resemblance to our world, thousands upon thousands of years ago. If you don't know, I'll catch you up to speed. Before our world advanced and invented ocean transportation, there was no possible, conceivable way for our ancestors to communicate. I imagine a common thought among these colonies of humans would be, are we alone? What else is out there? This reminds me heavily of the lands between. With it being an island, obviously there are differences being that they managed to sail across the fog. But what if there's something that binds those with grace to the lands between? I mean, once we regain our grace, we are beckoned back to the lands between and brought back from the dead. Something that really shouldn't be possible even in the Elden Ring universe, not including those in death. I have a theory. What if those with grace cannot physically leave the lands between? Perhaps due to being intrinsically bound to the greater will and its influence. This idea is reinforced even further, that by in the lore, only people without grace are mentioned to have crossed the fog, which is very peculiar in of itself. The whole topic of grace, its binding abilities, and my theory regarding all this could be a whole video in of itself, so I won't go into it fully today, but I thought it was important to give some context on the lands between before we talk about its counterparts beyond the fog. The first land talked about would be the elusive Badlands. Due to item descriptions, we can infer that the Badlands was the first destination of the Tarnished's long march. We are also told that along with the order to leave the land between, Godfrey was also told to wage war in a foreign land, which he and his soldiers certainly did, forming the Badlands, reverting back into his old ways, retaking the name Horrelu warrior. We only know a few things that occurred in the Tippy Badlands. The first thing we know is that he had a child. Whether or not this is Nefeli or Nefeli's ancestor is left up to the imagination. I will not claim to know the answer to this question, as we can't know yet as of recording this video due to not having enough information. I will say there is a strong chance Nefeli is Godfrey's daughter due to the fact that grace-given Tarnished are known as ye dead who yet live. From the opening cutscene, we know all the grace-given Tarnished in the lands between were once dead at one point or another. The second thing we know about the Badlands is, well, that the once mighty Elden Lord died there. The game tells us this in the opening cutscene of the game, introducing Horrelu with multitudes of spikes, arrows and swords piercing him, and his lethal beast, Serosh, that he once took upon his back ages ago to calm his bloodlust. Obviously, that bloodlust could only be sated for so long. While it's not directly stated, we can infer that after the death of Godfrey, chaos must have ensued. Who would have led the Tarnished? Who in his army could lead the remnants? There was no one, so his army must have collapsed in on itself. Most of the army probably abandoned the remnant, making splinter groups of Tarnished, probably travelling in every direction, claiming and creating whole countries. And I imagine many discovered pre-existing civilizations, like the land of Newman outside the lands between that Marika herself originates from. The Newman avatar in the character creation menu states, the supposed descendants are denizens of another world, long lived but seldom born. What this other world is, I do not know, but it suggests that the Numen originate from a realm separate from the continents of the lands between and the lands beyond the fog. How on earth, well, maybe for this video it should be, how on lands between did the Numen travel realms? I don't know the answer to this question, but I imagine it would be a very, very good tale. The fact also that the Numen avatar is even in the character selection screen suggests that the Tarnished did reach Numen and intermingle with the citizens of Numen, creating Tarnished / Numen children, which adds a whole nother layer to all this, and also confirms that the Tarnished did in fact reach the land of Numen. Going back to Marika, this whole situation is quite intriguing indeed, considering Marika herself is an emperyan, a child that to my understanding is born from one god or a god split in two, reinforcing and adding to the lore of the gods, demigods and outer gods, telling us multiple things. Like the existence of gods, not just in the lands beyond the fog, but also in different realities and worlds, which to an extent we could have sort of inferred before, considering the outer gods don't originate from the lands between, yet they all seem to be obsessed with the land. But Marika, the Numens and their item descriptions add so much more depth to these mysterious gods. Perhaps in Shadow of the Erdtree, or we forget a second or third DLC, we could hopefully see these ancient worlds and lands. One of the lands founded by the graceless Tarnished would be the land of Reeds, a land that from what we know is based off Sengoku Japan and Japan's Warring States period, where Japan was set aflame with civil war and unrest. Something that is almost identical to the information given to us about the land of Reeds. Before we continue, can I just say how much I love when From Software takes references from real life event lore and makes it into cool ass fantasy real life inspired lore. I really like history and anything like that, so super happy that I've got a chance in this video to talk and make more connections within the lore. Going back to the continents beyond the fog, instead of alternate worlds, I want to talk about the connection between the world of Elden Ring and its connection to Pangaea, which occurred in our world approximately 335 million years ago. If you didn't know, Pangaea was formed from the tectonic plates shifting and merging, creating a supercontinent with all the continents we know today. Over millions of years, the layout of our world changes, and given the connection From Software keeps making to real life lore, I think it's fair to say Elden Ring's world might follow the same rules. And if that's the case, can you imagine how epic it would be for there to be a future Elden Ring DLC where the lands between and the lands beyond the fog merge? I'm going to call the connection of these lands Elgian. Yes, I know original, but it saves time and makes things less confusing considering there are now other worlds and other realities. Going back onto the topic of outer gods, I think it's fair to say that like the Greater Will invaded the lands between, making it their own, I think the other outer gods probably have their own territories as well. Why they seek the lands between is a really big mystery that we probably won't ever understand, especially considering they are omnipotent beings. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, and if you didn't, a dislike would be just as appreciated. Before I go, I just want to say thank you for all the amazing comments. I mean, damn, some of the best lore discussions I've had have been in the comments. Our friend from the Ring City has one more thing to say before we go.
Many of us are by the fire, forsaken. I speak of thine kind and mine. Behold this city. We are kindred, but like two eyes which gaze upon the other. Fear not the dark, my friend, and let the feast begin.